Codependence Anonymous, Chapter 3, A Suggested Program of Recovery, page 37. Step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. Made a decision. We had admitted our powerlessness over the compulsive behaviors we had practiced for so long. We were beginning to believe a higher power could relieve them. The next step was obvious. If we believed we were powerless and that a higher power could transform us, why not accept it? Why not give God a chance where we had failed? Besides, what did we have to lose but our misery, our will, and our lives? Our old ideas called out to us to return to self-will. Once again, we attempted to play God in our lives and the lives of others. Old doubts sometimes challenged our new thinking. We began to believe that even though this program worked for others, we were different. Losing hope, we questioned our ability to change. It was this thinking that led us to acknowledge that this program of recovery was not a flash in the pan, something nice to do on a pleasant afternoon. It represented our opportunity to live as whole human beings, and if we wanted it, we would need the willingness to go to any lengths, even if it meant asking God for help more than once. Excerpt from Step 3 in the Coda 12 Steps Handbook. In this step, we continue to develop and strengthen our relationship with God. We pause to read this step and what it suggests we do. We reflect upon its wisdom and our feelings about surrender. We are asked to make a decision to let go of ourselves and others. We decide whether we can trust in God to care for all we consider precious and important. Trust does not come easily for many of us. For years we put our faith and hope in ourselves and others. We relied on everything but our higher power to provide us peace, happiness, and well-being. Control and avoidance have demanded a great deal of our time, attention, and energy. We know we've abandoned ourselves and given others the power of our well-being. Some of us pray and hope that God will help. But until we let go on a heartfelt level, our codependence continues. Through our work with steps 1 and 2, we realize that our control and avoidance no longer work and that others are no longer responsible for our happiness and well-being. We realize how our playing God or giving the power of God to others is short-lived, painful, and ultimately self-destructive. We gain a better or new understanding of a power greater than ourselves. Until we turn our emotional attention to God, we are still bound by our codependent thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. We may not be frightened by the thought of allowing God to take care of us and the other people in our lives. What if God doesn't do what we think best? What if things don't go the way we would like? What if they don't change? What will happen if others don't like us as we change in recovery? As codependents, our fears are understandable. They lay beneath our intense need to control and avoid ourselves and others. In letting go of our control and avoidances, these fears often surface and we are emotionally faced with our spiritual dilemma. Once we face these fears, we are at a crossroads. Do we return to playing God in ours and others' lives, or do we turn our will and life over to the care of God as we understand God? We remember that we are asked only to make a decision. We are not asked to instantly experience total faith and trust in God. Our ability to trust in healthy ways has more than likely been negatively affected by the codependence in our lives. We cannot expect to make this decision without some reservation and fear. To cope with our fears, we ask God for courage and strength. We seek the support and understanding of our sponsors and recovery friends. Some of us may create a special time and place to complete this step. In any case, when we are ready, we may find this prayer to be helpful. God, I give to you all that I am and all that will be for your healing and direction. Make new this day as I release all my worries and fears, knowing that you are by my side. Please help me to open myself to your love, to allow your love to heal my wounds, and to allow your love to flow through me and from me to those around me. May your will be done this day and always. Amen. When we make this decision, our fears, concerns, and reservations subside, and our relationship with God grows. Our trust grows stronger by continuing our recovery work and experiencing how God helps us to change our codependent behaviors. We feel a healthier sense of well-being. Our tendencies to control and avoid others and ourselves decreases. As we progressively release our control and avoidance behaviors and refocus our attention and energies on our own personal recovery, we're not as overwhelmed by life's circumstances. We experience a growing sense of serenity. We more effectively release the lives of others to the care of God as well. We may not realize how dramatic the changes have been in our lives and circumstances, because they're so often subtle. They happen day by day, and we may not see them. A review of just how far we've progressed over the past month, 6 months, and years can reassure us of God's continuing presence and care. We may experience circumstances when we think God cannot or will not help. We may revert to our former codependent survival patterns. If we look closely, we find that fear of shame are at work once again. We can walk a path toward serenity again by praying for God's help and guidance, talking with our sponsors and recovery friends, and reviewing these first 3 steps. Day by day we strengthen our relationship with God. We become more responsible for our recovery by placing this relationship first. Every day we find it helpful to renew our decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. As we continue to do this, our trust in God grows with our higher power's help. The program of CODA and the care and support of our sponsors and recovery friends, we can strive for a life of balance, strength, and serenity. Having brought an end to our spiritual dilemma and having developed a growing trust in the loving care of God as we understood God, we are ready to begin the healing of our relationships with ourselves, and step 4 begins this healing process. Step 4 made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Searching and fearless. Searching meant to look out over carefully in order to find something lost or concealed, to come to know, to learn, to seek, to conduct a thorough investigation. As fearless meant courageous, bold, and unconquerable. If searching meant to look for something lost or concealed, we were really on the brink of a great adventure, the discovery of our true selves. But this word fearless was another story. Many of us still believed it was impossible to approach this process without fear. We were comforted by others who had felt as we had. We realized that we were not alone, that we were embarking upon this journey with God, who would guide us gently along our way. Moral inventory of ourselves. The first part of this step defined the attitude we adapted as we worked it, one that was searching and fearless. The second part of step 4 gave us our focus and direction. This inventory would be only of ourselves, and it would pertain to our personal behavior in as many life experiences as we could recall. The word moral had many synonyms. Among them were words like honest, straightforward, fair, and open. The message in step 4 was clear. This inventory of ourselves was to be honest and straightforward, not critical or abusive. If this was to be a thorough inventory, we would need to list our assets and our liabilities. That meant we would have a truly balanced picture of ourselves. For some, it was more difficult to discover good points than to face shortcomings. For others, acknowledging positive qualities made the task less painful. Whatever our feelings were about this, we were encouraged to do both, as each was an important aspect of a thorough inventory. Excerpt from Step 4 in the Coda 12 Steps Handbook. Until now, we've focused on establishing or renewing our relationship with God as we understood God. In step 4, we begin a spiritual journey of healing our relationship with ourselves. Many beliefs, religions, and philosophies speak of cleansing the soul to spiritually evolve. Just as we boil river water to remove impurities for drink, so must we go through this process to drink more fully from life. As we do, we're better able to separate and appreciate our goodness from our unhealthy thoughts and behaviors. Our cleansing begins with an honest and thorough self-assessment through the work of step 4. We look to this step to continue our process of freedom and to help us become all that God intends us to be. Step 4 may appear overwhelming because it often causes memories to surface, particularly memories with feelings of pain, shame, and guilt that we tried to avoid. We review our first 3 steps. We remember our powerlessness and unmanageability. We think about the strength and hope we experience in our relationship with our higher power. We look to our sponsors and others in CODA for their support and guidance. We know we're not alone. Many before us have completed this step. We rely on God to lead us on this difficult inward journey. We remember that our courage to complete this step doesn't come from the absence of fear, but our willingness to walk through it. We work toward understanding our strengths and weaknesses, our internal assets and liabilities, who we are and what we've become as a result of our codependence. We look for understanding, not fuel to fire self-condemnation. This step, as part of our healing, a form of emotional surgery that requires gentleness and care. We find it helpful to refer to step 4 in the CODA 12 Steps Handbook for insight and to seek the support and guidance and experience of our sponsors and recovery friends. A variety of methods are available to complete step 4. One method is diagrammed on pages 44 through 45. In reviewing our lives, both the past and present, we list those people who have been affected by our codependent behaviors. We include God, ourselves, our mates, children, friends, family members, co-workers, and people who participate in various activities. In a second column, we list our codependent behaviors with each person. Throughout each relationship, specific behaviors may be difficult to remember. This is defined in 5 areas: emotional, physical, sexual, spiritual, and intellectual. Our behaviors could have included these: lying, manipulating, avoiding, denying, passiveness, aggressiveness, resenting, raging, silence, victimizing, abandoning, judging, neglecting, distancing, punishing, discounting, offending, bitterness, abusing, enmeshing, hypervigilance, over-controlling, over-pleasing, teasing, helplessness, shaming, hating. The list above is not inclusive. We offer it as a beginning for exploration. To be honest and thorough, we must ask ourselves if we've treated God, ourselves, and others in these ways. Have we abused, abandoned, become enmeshed with, or neglected God, ourselves, or others emotionally, physically, sexually, spiritually, or intellectually? Because we may have reacted or responded to mistreatment by others, it's easy to rationalize or justify some of our codependent behaviors. Doing this only serves to maintain and continue these behaviors and doesn't cause us to be accountable and responsible for changing them. We then create a third column to gain insight into what feelings drove our codependent behaviors. A fourth column can help us determine the consequences of our codependent behaviors to that person, ourselves, and the relationship. And a final or fifth column can help us determine our feelings about our codependent behaviors, the feelings that drive them, and their consequences. The following 2 pages are an example of such an outline. As we progress in this work, we see our codependent patterns emerge. Many times we react to people in similar or extreme ways, just as we reacted to a parent or authority figure from our childhood. We often put another person's face on this individual, not allowing us to see their true selves. Unknowingly, we recreate similar unhealthy and abusive patterns within our adult relationships. We must become responsible and accountable for these behaviors today, even though we learned them from our childhood. To thoroughly explore and understand the relationship we have with ourselves and to bring balance to the work of our fourth step, we must also explore our strengths, assets, and positive behaviors. For this purpose, it's helpful to return to the previous outline. We do so with the intent of making a new list of these people and identifying our positive, healthy, appropriate, and loving behaviors in our relationships with each one. In this new list, we add individuals who did not experience our codependent behaviors, people who have experienced our strengths, assets, and positive behaviors. It is helpful also to include a column for our feelings about our strengths, assets, and positive behaviors in each relationship. We must also want to include a column to identify when we behaved in a healthier manner than we did previously to show progress on our recovery journey. Some of us find it difficult to identify these behaviors. It can be insightful to ask our sponsors, recovery friends, mates, and family members about our strengths and positive behaviors. With an open heart and mind, we must strive to listen to what they share. At times, it's easy to become downtrodden with shame and fear from our past. Just as a tablecloth covers the beauty of a fine oak table, shame and fear cover our ability to witness our own God-given beauty, talent, and goodness. When we look at our relationships with ourselves from a thorough, more balanced perspective, we begin to realize we're not bad people at all. The shame messages we learned about ourselves as children are untrue. This is the way many of us learn codependent behaviors. We must remember not to use our strengths and positive behaviors to minimize our feelings about our codependency. We must maintain accountability, responsibility for these behaviors and our feelings about them in order to change them. Today we're not victims. We can't blame people, places, or things for our problems or codependent behaviors anymore. We become more humble as we explore our relationships with ourselves through the work of Step 4. It helps us open the door to see, accept, and begin loving ourselves as we are. From this place of humility, we become ready to complete Step 5.